Our ultimate goal is to kill the Oceankeeper. The secondary goal is to cause chaos and destruction on the way to there.
A school for psychic people on the island.
The Cruel Academy of Arcana and Arts is named for Jen.Cruel.
This Kroll person sounds awful. Killing them would be a benefit to all on Faerun. However, they're not the number 2 to the Kraken.
Oh, yes. The Tuesday nights. Come. Welcome. How can
Hello,
I
Agador.
be of service?
We have quite a shopping list today.
He slides the book over. Where are you going? Can I ask? There is someone out in that direction carrying a certain item. I want it. I need one trident.
Specific trident? Or
Famous last
Very
words.
specific trident. The Lord Admiral carries a trident of some renown. I have been commissioned to retrieve it on behalf of another party.
If this interested party, in your opinion, would be worse for the world to have than the Kraken Society, which I know is a big stretch.
It will not be worse for your world.
We're wanting a targeted strike. Do you happen to know where the Lord Admiral would be?
The Lord Admiral will either be at his academy or in the Coral Peak.
I feel like we'll be going up against this person anyway.
The only reason to kill the fella, the admiral, is the trident.
This person is leading that school of mages. He is a high-ranking individual in the Kraken Society. Well, are you suggesting you steal the trident?
Whoa, that's a fun idea.
If we bamf in and immediately go on a campaign of shock and awe and just slaughter in the streets, how long is it going to take for the Admiral to join the fray?
It wouldn't hurt to take his weapon from him. I mean, maybe we start with that.
We start with you stealing?
An attempt to steal.
I want to emphasize something to you, Vex, and I know you're a very capable thief.
This sounds very hard, I know.
This could be it. I know we're not thinking that because we haven't had a lot of losses.
I do have someone who's very smart in my pocket, and he will set envy on the table. And he
Excellent.
is a little green holographic representation of a vaguely feminine form that looks holographic with floating glyphs around it.
Hello, Envy. We are planning an assault, and we could use your tactical expertise. So, how far away then, now that we have this map, are the cathedral and the academy?
The cathedral is the furthest point kind of inward a little bit. So if you imagine it looks kind of like a crescent, right, that protects the inlet. There are a bunch of waterways and waterfalls, and mostly man-made, that kind of dig out. So there's a bunch of water that kind of crests over a hill that comes in against the back of the Deepwater Cathedral, which is kind of set at the farthest point on the inland side of the bay. The stockades are almost at the opposite end, like 3/4, 2/3 of the way down towards the opposite end of the bay. The Cruel Academy is relatively close to the stockades. It's just a bit inland at a perpendicular, kind of up on a hill. A harbor that processes people, and then you go slightly up the harbor to where a fancy part of town would be, where rich people would have an estate overlooking the harbor, and then that estate houses children who are trained to kill people. The Lord Admiral is more than likely going to be at the Cruel Academy, to which it is named after.
Okay.
You do know that in terms of civic authority, he would generally spend some time at the Cruel Academy and or lower priority on assault and silver stockades, chiefly the silver stockades, because he cares about important people being sold off.
I'm going to break character for a bit. I'm thinking of... Sorry. I don't know. I tried to think of a way to say this, and there was no way for me to say it as Uthal. I'm thinking of that StarCraft mission. There's multiple, where you have blank minutes to cause as much destruction as possible before the full forces get to you. I'm thinking we do that. Like, which would we rather have less alert? The forces at the cathedral or the forces at Kroll's Academy? But we kind of...
that more than likely there will face more foes at the academy.
That's where I was
Everything
leaning to.
Envy knows or has heard would indicate that the Oceankeeper is a very formidable force, and she doesn't need help to be dangerous. You might have to fight a legion if you fight the academy, which would be tough. But if you're fighting her,
She doesn't need help.
yeah, which is probably more terrifying.
I'm going to ask Alice and Faye specifically about this. Do you think the combined force of our party is better at dealing with 100 medium-sized things or one gigantic thing? Brotor and I can fight. Basically, from the instant we land on here, we can keep fighting and keep fighting. But you have resources you'll need to expend for these massive fights.
I would, first of all, like to say that the phrase looking forward to a giant X-Men style battle on the steps of the Academy has been said several times over the past week.
3 of you are much more capable of dealing sustained single target damage versus the other 2. If you were so inclined, though it would be risky, you could separate and split up and set a group that would leverage against active AoE attacks against the Academy and single targets against the Oceankeeper. This would potentially leave the people attacking the Oceankeeper vulnerable to whatever spells she may bring to bear, potentially leaving them crippled or dead.
I want to remind the party who is speaking, and it's not Envy.
Have you considered a reconnaissance mission? Since we seem to be in a place with ample magical opportunities, it seems worth bringing up. In such a case, you would be able to make a pointed strike on the island, potentially disguising yourself with either magic or physical disguises, and would then be able to investigate, at least until such a point as your disguises were discovered. Of course, if you were discovered, it would imply that it might increase hostilities before you even arrive and make your strike. But you would potentially gain unknown knowledge.
Envy, I don't know why we don't talk more. You're a delight.
You are.
Right?
If
It's
only your
almost as if-
keeper were not that stingy with you.
I was going to say, it's almost as if Thor gave us a Deus Ex Machina to ask him questions without asking him questions, and we've
Thor
never
gave
used
you
it
a
until this
wizard
moment.
to have in your pocket because you were
Yeah.
shy of 100% arcane resources.
I mean, there's obvious merits to doing a recon mission. I don't know if it's entirely necessary. I say we take all of the help, go in and do both the things. I like the idea of doing the crowd first and just let the physical attackers do as much of the work as possible, conserve spells until absolutely needed. Just get it done.
I understand the Cool Academy is full of spellcasters.
Yeah.
Might be useful to know what type of spellcasters they are.
At the outset, we should assume capabilities most heavily focused towards charm, domination, enchantment, possible abjuration and transfiguration magic, and of course, evocation magic. In short, they will seek to strip your mind's defenses, render you a puppet, and then kill you if you are not useful. It lies to assume a reconnaissance-style entrance regardless of an original plan, to be cloaked with things such as pass without a trace, non-detection, or other such abilities, hopefully with seeming or alter self to compensate for your appearances. Some of you especially stand out.
They'll grow large. Grow.
Exactly.
Meet him again.
I look around at all of us, and the antlers, no black eyes, and Brotor's
Angelicness, celestial,
shining.
yeah, radiance.
So who else volunteers Vex for a stealth reconnaissance mission?
So
Never
My
saw
one-
him again.
my one worry with that is exactly how would we know if something went wrong? I
Yeah.
believe we would need to send at least 2.
Oh, I mean, I can go. I went with him that first time into the cathedral.
Right.
The mouse, right?
Something like that.
Something
Something very
rodent-y.
small, rodent-like.
With the combination of non-detection and the magical prowess of Fae and Vex, I feel more. I'll put it this way: I can't be on a recon mission. I could try if you really need me there. My job will be to come in and beat people up if you get discovered. Envy, do you think with enough magical preparation, the 5 of us could go on the recon mission?
Of course. If you had, for example, each of you a potion of altered self, you would be able to change your appearance to match those that you have seen or otherwise associate with the persons there. If each of you were under the influence of the non-detection spell, which would require some other party to cast upon you so as not to consume concentration resources, then all of you would be protected from scrying sensors, as well as from physical observation based on other parties. Assuming you were semi-competent at providing passable excuses to vague interrogation methods by the cultists and occupants therein, you may presume to be able to move semi-freely throughout the place. It does stand to reason if people saw that you were subject to magical effects in an academy full of magic, you may in fact do more to pass as one of the recipients therein than as an outsider who may otherwise not have magical effects upon their person. That's not a guarantee, but it stands to reason that a magical academy has people constantly under the impacts or effects of magical resources and spells.
What about the fact that the kraken itself cannot be deceived by any kind of like magical deception?
You are quite correct. If any of us are to get any close to Slarkrethel, we would absolutely be found out almost immediately and subject to immense and terrifying death. We would be well to avoid him.
I think Envy hit the nail on the head when she said it would be best if we disguised ourselves, especially if we're going to the academy, as a group of people from the academy.
Mhm.
If we could look like some students or
Right.
people that would be, they are people that would, I would assume, travel as a group. There wouldn't be anything untoward about 5 students being
Right.
together.
Previously noted that many of the students of higher means would also have retainers accompanying them, usually those branded with slave marks.
Right.
The more we're talking about it, we're using a lot of assumptions about maybe they'll be here, or maybe it would be very helpful to have more intel about at least the layout. We must be prepared for when we do the recon. The recon mission is essentially plan A, but plan B is the actual assault. So we need to have everything on our person and all the spells prepared that would let us do that. Here's the plan from the top down. We inform the Hoppers and the Storm Giants that we are doing a recon mission and we would like them to be essentially on call for the recon mission. Plan A, recon goes out without a hitch, and then we take that information and make a full assault with Storm Giants and Hoppers. Plan B, if we're caught during the recon mission and we feel we can't escape, or we feel it's good for us, we call in the Hoppers to come in, cause some chaos at the academy, and then we do what we need to do with the Oceankeeper. That means that the recon mission needs to have all of our equipment such that we can begin the assault if we need to.
Right.
So your spell gym, Faye, needs to be ready. Whatever spells you need to prepare for high-end destruction, as opposed to recon, need to be that way. That's not a problem for Vex or Alice, but for Faye, you should just your prep should look like destruction as opposed to recon.
Destruction.
Right. Broto and I will pack our destruction weapons as opposed to our talking weapons.
Backdoor will chime up. I know you were busy right now, but just so you know, I found this and I had some modifications made to it. It does require attunement. Don't know if you care, but it does help prevent against certain charming effects and other stuff. Here's to have modified a Githyanki silver sword.
Brotor, I know you love your current weapon. Perhaps for this specific instance, might you see fit to take up a sword?
I think I'm pretty good with those. Oh, it is a great sword.
It's a great sword,
Oh,
yeah. This is a badass sword. It's intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. Agro, while you're here, can you tell us what... We might need to know this for tactical reasons. What does the trident do? What should we expect to see it do against us, perhaps?
Things like breathing underwater and never being surprised, commanding ocean creatures, things of that nature. If it is able to make a critical strike against you, it's going to hurt. I cannot stress enough how much it's going to hurt.
Remind me when we're in the fight that I need to be as close as possible to this trident, because I cannot be critically hit.
Additionally, it can also block out in quite a large radius lots of things, ranging from living matter, wind, gases, fog, non-living matter, spell effects, ceilings, walls, you name it, from getting within 15 feet of it. It is capable of duplicating, if you're familiar with the item, a cube of force. So, for example, whoever is currently wielding the weapon can prevent all living matter from getting within 15 feet of him, period.
I saw Alice deploy something. Alice deployed something similar in our fight in the Underdark recently, I think. A wall of force, was it?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, it is similar to that. But in this case, the user would be able to determine whether or not they want things to come through and allow air and gases and fog and living and creatures and solid objects and just straight up not be permitted.
All right.
Pretty cool.
So it's worth mentioning that if they choose to do that, your physical presence would be unable to get to them. Period. Or weapons.
What is a counter to that?
Hope they don't choose to enable that direct feature. I understand some particular spells can be leveraged to expend resources for the weapon, but it's not permanent, and it's not 100%. It is very much variable. I know for a fact that the most powerful way to reduce the effectiveness of it, potentially, is with something called the Prismatic Spray spell, or Disintegrate. Horn blasting or pass wall spells can reduce some of the charges of the weapon. But so long as it has sufficient charges, it will be able to rebuke whatever the owner decides. Which again, may not be living matter. It could just be immunity to spells. Outright.
The assumption is that it will take some of these resources, and so we could beat our way through eventually?
Yes, if you had enough disintegrates. Although, to be clear, if you had enough disintegrates, you could probably solve most problems.
That's fair. Thor, since we've talked a lot about plans, do you know the plan? Does this help you prep for next week?
I mean, I was ready. I told Lindsay I have 24 maps and 36 monsters newly added. I still had the original complement beforehand.
Yeah.
So it's just like, where you fuckers go and what you decide to do is going to be what shakes the pot up. And I got a lot of different things in that pot. So I honestly don't know. I know Cruel, I know the Oceankeeper, I know some notable NPCs that you'll probably recognize very quickly. And some other things. And then the rest I'm just going to let you guys decide and we'll find out. But yeah, this place is here to fuck you up. Let me tell you, the Githyanki really don't like it when somebody other than them have their swords, and they really don't like it when you modify the magical enchantments. But all told, you're up to 198,750.
Okay. That's not... It would bankrupt us. Well, that's not true. It would deplete our funds, but it would not bankrupt us. So, just in case.
I mean, I think all we would have to do is, I don't know, sell our flying castle. We'd probably get back on our feet.
Right. We knew it would be powerful here, but this is very powerful. This owlbear has life figured out.
Damn straight I do. You must be new. I can do other languages if you prefer. The most important thing is that new students should always bring Logan plenty of fresh fish and beer. I used to be in the Feywild. And apparently one of the magisters here thought I was pretty interesting. And like you can see his talon is in his flesh, and as he's pulling it down, the flesh knits behind the talon.
How will you know when that wears off?
Well, it's been 8 years, so probably not too much longer.
Are there any big events that are coming up?
Yeah, of course. The Grand Admiral is going to be doing his address.
Today?
You know, yeah. Something happened that he wanted to address the community. Some big something or other went south side on another part of the world that sucks that I don't care about.
I suspect that was our activities in Skullport.
Who's to say?
Who's to say? The Academy has multiple iron golems patrolling it.
Xander, he gets in your brain, supposedly.
We know not to use spells against the owlbear. The Cyclops has a ranged attack. We know that the creatures that fly can slam into the ground with immediate precision.
We could try to exploit one of these magisters to get a meeting with the Admiral, or at least pin him down to be in a certain spot at a certain time.
They make these boxes for these orbs that the Oceankeeper summons or creates or crafts. They have to be in the boxes or else they blow up, and if they blow up, they drown places. Some of our operations in some parts of the north, namely Waterdeep, were recently disrupted. Let it be known, this is a direct strike against our persons, our goals, and even against your own safety. There are terrible people in this world that mean all of us ill will. These instruments of her wrath, these devastation orbs, each one capable of washing away a city. If I was given more time and a substantial pot of resources, I could be able to fashion crude automatons that are somewhat resistant to magical effects. This has never come up before, but it is something I have always been able to do. While we're at it, I can also de-age you, if any of you are feeling particularly old. If I have 8 hours and some resources, I can create a magical device that I can expend to do things such as restoring life, restoring youth, removing diseases, curses, afflictions, and poisons. Basic alchemy. 5 foot of stone, 5 foot of gold.
Oh, we need to have a chat with Vex at some point.
This is getting into like me being kind of silly territory, but I want to talk it through anyway. My imp, okay, can turn invisible, but would be seen because it's like a magic thing, right? Like if he's like trying to find the ocean lady and he's invisible, she could potentially see him, right? If he wore a physical disguise, could he pass for a toddler at first glance?